Milk safety is so important. I am Dr. Diana. I am the CEO and founder of Pump with Purpose. We are a global lactation and postpartum private practice teaching women all across the world to breast pump. Shortly, I am going to be joined by Dr. Leslie. We're going to talk about breast milk safety because it is so very important to make sure that you understand some common concerns, some best practices. So let me get her on now. She is a 20 plus year pediatrician. I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to let her share all about what she does. So hold on. Let me get her invited. All right. So hope y'all are doing well. This is going to be an amazing live. So thank you all for joining us. Hi, Dr. Leslie.
Hey, Diana, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
That is great. So I was like, I'm not going to steal her thunder. I am going to let you, I want you to introduce yourself to the community. I'm going to let everyone know up front this live, as long as Instagram is Instagramming, I will save this live for the future.
Perfect. All right. Well, I am Dr. Leslie Treese, and I've been in private practice pediatrics for about 23 years and board certified pediatrician in the state of Tennessee. And I'm a mom of two, and they're grown. So we made it through all that. And I'm a breastfeeding and pumping advocate. They were a huge part of my experience with my first baby because I was a resident when I had him. So we went through a whole lot that year. I have a special interest in helping new moms learn what to expect and how to focus on the right things when their delivery and after having their baby, and how to communicate with their partner about their needs and all that sort of thing. I did not know how to do that when I was young. And it's something that I very strongly feel can make such a big difference in emotional outcomes with pregnancy and delivery and all those things. My second child, I had a pretty severe case of postpartum after I had her. And it has led me to where I am. And it's very interesting, all the things that happened in between and all that, but I really enjoy working with young families, young babies. I enjoy all of them, really. I like all my patients. And I even have some second generation ones now, but I decided to get in the online space because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation in the online space, and we need more physicians to get active in this space and to put truth out there. And so that's really my big push, is to get truth out there.
Yes.
So
I love it. So I want to give the community some background. So I do not know like Dr. Leslie. So we don't have any history. What she just stated of, she talks about misinformation, and she informed me of, and I came on the record on social media and stated that I changed my position. Dr. Leslie was so nice to me. Like, that the social media can be a mean place, right? And she was so nice, and she came to me, and I'm going to tell you just really quickly the backstory because we got a lot to talk about, so I can get her position on this. But I had a post up that was talking about spraying leftover breast milk on your baby that was expired. And let me explain the term expired first, because that's where a lot of this comes from. So expired to me means like you've given it to your baby and baby didn't finish it. So we just like put it in the fridge or something and just feed it later, right? But that's outside of CDC guidelines. Not feed it later, put it in a milk bath or on your baby's skin later. Sometimes you'll have a pump breast milk in a bottle or in your diaper bag, and you find it like who knows when later. And I've done it before for my children. I have put it in a milk bath. Or let's say you have some milk in the fridge and it stays in there for, you look back and you're like, darn, how long has this milk been in the back of the fridge because it's not labeled? And you give it in a milk bath. Some people use stuff for diaper rash, for baby skin, for pink eye, like all the amazing things that fresh breast milk, can be beneficial for. We have in the past, or I have stated in the past, that I have used it on my children and throughout social media.
right.
Well, Dr. Leslie was like, well, if the milk is no longer safe for consumption, it could have grown bacteria. And if a baby has a cut or a hole, and we know no matter if you have a boy or a girl, you got ways that bacteria can enter their body in a bath, or anything like that. Just, keeping it, rated G. And it's so important that it could make bacteria potentially, if it's in the breast milk, it's not being tested for the bacteria growth to see where it is. And I am not of the space where if I did it, it's okay. So you all should do it. Once she brought it to my attention and I thought about it, I was like, wow, this is absolutely correct. And I was immediately took the post down. I remembered once I deleted it that I could find her. So I went back to social, found her. We've had amazing conversation just about, breast milk and safety as a 20 plus year pediatrician, what she's seen over the years. So first I want to start there, Dr. Leslie, with, when you saw that, and, you saw what are some of the things, have you seen this in practice before? Just I believe it doesn't. So it was a lot of back and forth with people on social saying, all the things, and people, they can do what they want to do. But for me, I will no longer promote using breast milk that's no longer safe for consumption on baby skin, eyes, whatever. But I would love to know, some of your rationale behind that.
So one of the things that you've got to consider is that you sometimes can't tell if there is an abrasion or a break in the skin. So anything that contains bacteria could potentially lead to infection in that way, and it's sometimes hard to tell. The other thing to think about, especially babies under 2 to 3 months old, is that their immune system is not fully formed at that point, and they're very immunocompromised. So babies, that's the reason we get so excited about fever in babies that age, because they don't have the immune capacity to fight infection off. And so it would be much easier for those babies to get an infection related to contaminated breast milk, for example, or any kind of bacteria living on their skin. So, if they get a little bout of eczema, and then we put, which means that the skin integrity is compromised, and then we put breast milk on it, it happens to contain some bacteria, then we could potentially lead to like a cellulitis or whatever. So you just got to be a little careful,
Yeah,
right?
no one's really tracking it. Like sometimes if our children have eczema or, start to develop concerns, no one's asking those questions like, hey, have you, like, now that I'm thinking about it, have you have you done milk baths? Was it with fresh milk? We're not even,
Honestly, I mean, honestly, this has been very educational for me because I didn't realize people were
we
doing
were
that.
doing
So,
it.
so it actually adds to the things that I could ask, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, so no, I really want to bring forward that, for here at Home with Purpose, we believe in you doing what's best for you, and we just arm you with informed decisions. But once that came up, you will no longer hear me state, because I believe in the safest practices. I believe in keeping our children safe, because my baby was a NICU baby. I have a lot of NICU moms. I have a lot of families that donate their breast milk. I have a lot of families that may have immunocompromised or babies in the NICU as well, or just you don't want to introduce things that you don't
right.
need to. If you have the oversupply, if you have some extra milk, you can always do it with fresh breast milk or breast milk that does not go outside of the CDC guidelines. And I also want to say I am aware that other organizations use other guidelines outside of the CDC. Here at Pump With Purpose, we use the CDC as just a place that we inform you and base our practice off of. You can have your feelings towards the CDC, neither here nor there. Here, they have the research. We are following it here at Pump With Purpose, and a lot of, doctors' offices follow it as well. So this is not a debate over, where we get our information from. This is what we use here. And for that, we will continue to let you know about it. So I just wanted to jump in first because that was the basis of us meeting. But I also want to, because I saw, MD, the pediatrician, the baby expert. And since I have you, I just want to ask you, what are some common concerns that you see over your 20 plus year history? What common concerns do you see in breastfed babies? Are there other things that we're not thinking about that we should be concerned about?
So the things that are probably the most common things that I see that are issues, especially. So the first couple are initially, like those first few days. One thing would be if the baby is getting jaundiced and or mom's milk is slow to come in. So if you're a first time breastfeeder, frequently what we see is that milk coming in is more along the 5 day mark rather than the 2 day mark.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like riding a bike. The second time you do it, usually it's faster, but that first time, sometimes it takes as long as 5 days to get in. And the new parents may not recognize that it's not fully in, and then we can end up with a dehydrated baby, especially if that baby's been extremely sleepy, which the dehydration makes it more, more obvious. But they get very sleepy and they just can't stay awake through their feedings, and then it just sort of feeds on itself. So that's one thing that sometimes people don't recognize, that okay, I don't know if I'm getting milk, so maybe they need to pump and see how much volume they're getting. Baby stomachs are very small those first few days, and they don't need a lot. When they're born, their stomach's the size of a grape, and it's very small, so they don't need a lot of volume. But as they get a little bit bigger, they need that volume frequently. And as they get a little bit bigger, a few days older, it gets larger. But what we see is that, maybe parents also don't recognize that the baby's urine output has gotten less, and or just isn't very much, and or they're not pooping a lot. And if we see those things, we know those are like clinical indicators that we're having problems. So follow up with your pediatrician after hospital discharge is very important. We recommend within 2 to 3 days after you're discharged. And pediatricians don't get really excited about the weight loss until we get to about the 10% down mark.
Yeah.
When we get to that point, you're probably dealing with a little bit more significant issues. And if you're following along, you can get some good advice about when you need to supplement. So that's one thing. Sometimes I think people don't recognize that they got dry and it gets so far that they end up needing fluids, actually. And then there are moms who just struggle to produce breast milk in spite of doing everything correctly. And sometimes people feel like such a failure. And it's like, you're not a failure if you can't make breast milk. And I think that's, common thinking is that I can't do this. I must be doing something wrong. And you could have done everything exactly right. Sometimes I think genetics play a role in that. And I definitely think stress plays a role, because a lot of times we'll see first time moms who don't produce milk, and then when the next baby comes, they've kind of figured out, okay, I can chill about all this and it's okay. And then they'll be good, that they can actually produce the milk. So I do think like your cortisol levels and your stress play a big, big role. And then the third thing I thought of when you asked me this question was, sometimes when a baby gets 2, 3, 4 months old, and pediatricians track a baby's weight and growth as they go along. And I'll see a baby come in at 4 months for that 4-month well visit, and their weight will have just flatlined. Like they won't be gaining any weight. And we start exploring, and it doesn't appear that mom has, or the baby has any organic issues. There's no disease process going on. And we start asking more questions, and it turns out that mom's milk supply has gone way down. And a lot of times I think new moms especially don't recognize this, or people who are really, really into, I've got to breastfeed or I'm a failure kind of thinking. And the baby will have gone through what they thought was cluster feeding. The baby will demand and demand and demand, and they'll try and try, and they feed them and they're never satisfied. And then the baby ends up sort of getting over that, but they're still not getting enough calories. And I think they almost accept that that's the case. And those babies will lose a lot of their subcutaneous fat, and their weight will flatline. And then when we start feeding them, a supplement, it gets better. So those are probably the 3 biggest issues that I can think of just off the top of my head. But
I love that. And especially as a 2-time C-section mom, I can say my first time around, milk did not transition in until 5 days. I felt all the things that you said. I felt like a failure. I was like, oh my gosh. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, I remember the day my breast milk transitioned into like more of that transitional milk. And I still remember the feeling. And every time I mention it, I remember the feeling, crying on the bed of like, It's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not a failure. My body did not just fail me. And even on my second
Right.
journey, when I had an oversupply of milk, I mean, my milk transitioned around that 2 to 3 day mark the second time with the planned C-section and all the medication that comes with it. So, like you said, it does not matter. But I still was scared. And the moment it transitioned, I remember sitting on the bed crying in tears because, I was like, oh my gosh, like you never know. And it creates so much anxiety because, if that is your goal is to, provide some type of breast milk, it can be hard. And I do want to ask you about one thing you mentioned about these checkups, right? So what I find in my client base is that 2 week mark, and like you said, that 4 week mark. If babies aren't meeting goal, it comes a big stressor. Like,
Right.
oh my gosh, you need to supplement, supplement, supplement. It's heavy on, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, because no one is telling people some of the things you mentioned to consider pumping sooner. So you have your own breast milk.
Right.
No one really talks about mentioning donor milk but I know sometimes depending on milk banks and stuff and baby's age and all of that, it comes with a different set of pressure. But so a lot of times we find that people are pushed, into formula because of the weight loss. What are some things that you think parents can think of before that 2 week mark to look for, or before that 4 week mark? I mean, you mentioned some of it, where they're thinking they're clustering and they may not be, getting the adequate amount of milk that they need. But like, are there other, things that you think that could be beneficial to families between that 2 and 4 week mark? Because that is a big part where the first 2 weeks are critical for milk being established, or the first 40 days per research. Do you have any thoughts?
Like as far as what they can do to make sure their baby's
Yeah.
getting enough.
Oh, yes, and some things, because not everyone has the scale at
Right.
home, or realize, especially when you're nursing, you're not able to see or know what baby's getting.
Right.
Are there any cues that families can look for to
Absolutely.
see? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed, of course, we already talked about urine and stool,
Mhm.
but also when the baby turns into the boss. Okay. So they really, when they get hydrated and they start getting fed well, first of all, you're going to hear them suck, gulp, suck, gulp. And before the milk comes in, it's suck, suck, swallow, or suck, 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 swallow. So and when they start gulping, and you can kind of time how long they're gulping and be able to tell a lot about how long they're getting, that full letdown or whatever. But you can also pump instead of one feed when you're ready to start giving a little bottle feeding, or pump one side. If you nurse that longer period on the first side and then kind of top them off of the second side, pump the rest of the second side and see how much there is, because a lot of times you can kind of tell, okay, I'm probably making this many ounces or whatever. And then, just if you don't have a way to check weight, once again, the poop should be frequent and it should be yellow and seedy. They're probably going to poop 10 to 12 times a day those first few weeks. And then it scares everybody to death when they're 6 weeks old and they quit pooping. It's like, okay, where's the poop? But as long as they're having a blowout every 7 to 10 days and they're eating well, then generally we're okay. So, and the baby should be getting fat. They should be getting thick legs and lots of rolls and filling out and not looking wasted or with loose skin. If you start seeing any of that, you need to call your doctor right away. But hopefully you've been followed all along and you can tell this baby is satisfied and they're full. It's,
Mhm.
I mean, they have physical cues that show you that they're full. If they're really restless and fussy all the time, possibly they have a milk allergy or something else, but you got to think about milk
Yeah.
supply. It's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Agreed. So I also I want to talk as well about the next question is like any common, I don't I put the word out, but say the word that I put, but any common practices, that could be improved for families to when handling and storing their breast milk. Do you see common things that you wish families would know about, or best practices when it comes to handling milk?
I mean, basic things, probably common mistakes would be not washing your hands when, before you breastfeed and or pump, and cleaning your equipment. Storing your breast milk for too long, like in the refrigerator and then still using it, longer than is recommended, or letting it sit out on the counter too long. If you forget and it sits out too long, just toss it and move on. But and if you're not going to use it right away, go ahead and freeze it. And so those are things. I think letting the milk get too much air exposure in the freezer. So if you don't get the air out of the bag, then it's going to get like kind of like chicken does. It just gets kind of icy. And yeah. And then not cleaning their pump parts thoroughly. That's obviously a big deal. And you're so tired when you're postpartum, and it seems like so much work, but you don't want a sick baby like this. You can create a really sick baby. So best practices, I think, are keep a cleaned off area near your sink that's dedicated to cleaning and drying of pump parts, and nothing can splash on it. And make sure that you're getting the pump parts and things good and dry before you put them away. And then this is a big one. And I think getting your partner involved with cleaning the pump parts, get them involved in the process before you get started. And somebody just said, I invested in so many extra parts. That's really smart. But getting your partner involved, have a conversation before your baby comes about, will you help me with this? This is what I need. And this is something I really like, is the idea of teaching new moms to communicate with their partner their needs and be specific. Say, hey, will you please do this? And let me show you exactly how to do this, because this is going to make me feel loved, and this is going to help me get the rest that I need. And make it all about you, but get them involved. And then I think also just keep a little chart to track when you've done how often it needs to be cleaned, how often it needs to be sterilized, and then just kind of make it really simple, but just check it off. And that way in your brain fog, you won't forget.
Yeah. I love it. I want also to ask you about something you talked about is, there's this, theory, people, you mentioned it about pumping. So according to everyone, a lot of people, they'll tell you not to pump for 6 to 12 weeks. They'll tell you 4 to 12 weeks. They'll say a pump can't empty you like a baby. And you kind of mentioned, which I believe in as well. And in that pumping still tells you something, even if it doesn't tell you what your baby, if your baby removed whatever, because per research, babies on average can nurse from 12 to 67 minutes, right? So, you never know how efficient a baby can be.
Right.
But if you do go to pump and you have an efficient pump and the right flanges, and you still are getting something like mLs or like 1 ounce or something, it's still a red flag to try to get help wherever that is. So I still want to point out that even if, people are of the mindset, I don't need to pump yet because a pump can't empty. If you are feeling like your baby's not getting satiated and full or fussy at the breast, or even if you did pull up to the pump, give a good break 2 to 3 hours to see what your pump can do, it still is an indicator. Hey, do I need to get help, instead of waiting until that 4-month mark when milk supply has, regulated and you're in a different stress level, as well. So I think that's important. And I also wanted to ask you about solids, right? Because we know that sometimes once baby starts solids, hope, we recommend around that 6-month mark, there may be some changes in what you see in the pediatrician. So can you talk about like that starting solid period for families, and like what common questions you get for that with also feeding breast milk?
I think people get really caught up in, how often do I need to nurse then? And so truly, when you start solids, your nursing is not going to change that much at first. It's going to be about the same. You're going to add, and I recommend adding the solids in a spoon fed form, rather than putting them in a bottle with something. But, and the reason, so we start with rice, usually rice or some sort of grain. And there are people who feel differently about this, but I think the important piece of that is, first of all, rice is the least allergenic food, and rice and any of the cereals, the grains, have iron in them. And breastfed babies especially are a little bit more at risk of iron deficiency, and the maternal iron stores are gone between 4 and 6 months in the baby's body. And so if you start an iron supplement, as in cereal, at that 6 month mark, then you're going to get better iron in the diet, and it's going to prevent that anemia that we're searching for at 12 months. So, and I recommend doing that twice a day at first, but like I said, the volume's going to be very small, and I don't think the breastfeeding changes all that much. And then as you slowly introduce the other foods, which are going to be, I think it's best to do savory down to sweet. So start with your greenest vegetables. So maybe some spinach, and your baby's probably going to gag anyway. But you do that, and then, slowly work your way down. By the time you're 7 or 8 months, then you're doing more foods. And by 9 months, you start making that natural transition over to more food and less milk. But it's more of an art than a science, in my opinion. I think people get too caught up in all the details, and it should just be kind of a fun experience, and just, feed your baby and don't worry too much about it.
I love
But
it. So one of the big questions I find that I see on social media, since that's where we are right now living, is this balance act of, how do parents balance this breast milk safety concerns with actually caring for babies? We're in this
right,
convenient, fast approach to everything,
right,
buy extra parts, wash after each use, returning to work, I'll get questions all the time of, I only have 20, 30, 30 minutes total for a break, and I need that to pump. How do I, balance all of it? I'm like, just
right.
buy extra parts and wash when you get home, and, things like that if you don't have time to wash between uses. But, we are in this new age of easy, fast, convenient. And when it comes to breast milk, we know that it's still important, with all the things that enter into our baby's bodies and through an environment and through, just in general. Um, yes, breast milk has immunity. I mean, can create, antibody and immunity benefit, but, some of this stuff is, very important to try to balance a little bit
Right.
more. So what do you say, can help families as they think about balancing safety versus convenience?
Well, I think we got to do the best we can. You may not do it exactly according to the guidelines, but if you get close, you're probably going to be fine. I mean, the guidelines are pretty stringent and extreme, but we all live in the real world, right? I don't think I was perfect about how I did it. I used to have overnight call the first that first few months when I was nursing my first baby, and my husband would page me when he would feed the baby, and I would get up and pump. I would be in the call room at work. And I seriously doubt that I got up and washed those pumps or those parts. It was a long time ago, but I mean, you do the best you can, wash them, sterilize them as quick as you can. Sometimes you're going to forget and leave them sitting out or go to sleep or whatever. But, I think, like I said before, the clean, organized space to keep it if you're home is a great thing. If you've got to put it in your pump, like in the case, at least try to rinse it and then go back later and sterilize. Just do the best you can and be easy on yourself. I would try to stick as close to those guidelines as you can. Don't follow trends that aren't based on science, because sometimes those things can get us in trouble. And even if they didn't hurt one person, they might hurt somebody else.
Right.
And so you don't want your child to be
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. Overall, what would you like parents to know? Like, you got into this space for a reason. So I want to know, like, what would you want parents to know, regardless? And I know I put about breast milk safety and concerns to look for, but like in general, you entered this space for a reason, and you see, like you said, all the stuff that's out here, and we do need to call, to get the pediatricians, to get the OBGYNs, and they are here, but it could be more, right? Just to help balance all the other influencing that takes place. So just wanting to get from for you and your words, from you and your words, what do you want parents to know about you, about why you're here, what your goals are, just so they can understand?
So as far as what I would like all parents to think about is, when you're going to believe something that somebody says, check and double check and consider the source and ask a lot of questions. As far as me,
Yeah.
I'm here to serve parents and to serve children. And this is what I've been doing for a long time, but I wanted to take it to a platform that's more than just one-on-one. So this kind of helps give me that. I'm still building my community and working on these things. And I've just launched my course called Baby Ready, and it's for expectant parents, and it's to help parents work through all the things that you deal with concerning preparing for your baby. So it covers like packing your hospital bag, preparing your home, picking your pediatrician. I've got a whole document to walk them through how to decide what doctor you're going to see. And it's a huge document, actually. I sat down and brainstormed and came up with all kinds of things. So it also has a workbook, and I have them work through self-care and some partner work. So kind of thinking through how do we communicate with each other, because I think sometimes having kids destroys relationships if you aren't careful. So, it's a whole big change. And then I also take them and give guidance on breastfeeding, bottle feeding, um, taking your baby home, the things to consider there, picking an appropriate car seat, walking through the first couple of pediatrician visits. All those things are in there. It's self-guided. I've also got an option for a couple of 1-hour sessions to do some coaching with them. It's not for medical advice, it's just for coaching, but to get everybody's questions answered. And then I have a community, which is very small right now, but working on it. So we're gonna have like once a week Q&A sessions in my community so that parents can get all their questions answered and be ready for their baby and be able to enjoy their baby instead of being stressed.
You said a whole word today. Like, what can we all like? Look, can you move to all of our states and be our pediatrician? Right? Can you
Oh,
do
thank
that?
you.
If you're wondering, Dr. Leslie is in Tennessee, but she can move to like all of our hometowns and say like,
You're
hey,
sweet.
but
Thank you.
no, I think that is amazing. I am, all the partner work and really just helping prepare families from a medical doctor, pediatrician perspective. Like, I think that that is amazing. And that sounds like a lot of work, time, energy that has gone into this. So I'm so glad that
Yes,
is it
ma'am.
already, have you launched it already?
Yeah, I've launched it and I'm working on promoting it.
Okay.
I'm hoping that Instagram is going to be the place that that's going to happen. I have a Facebook, but mostly my Facebook right now is just my Instagram
Yeah.
videos kind of hopping over there.
Yep.
And it's just a lot for one person to do. So I'm in the process of working on my team and getting everything together. I'm also starting to cross post a little bit to
Okay.
YouTube, and I'm planning on having, so my YouTube is Dr. Leslie Treese is what
Yeah.
it's called, but I'm planning on doing some more other pediatric content because I feel like a broken record at work sometimes. I have certain talks that I give to people about like behavior and discipline and things like constipation. And if I had a link to a video, I could talk to them about it a little bit and give them the link, and then they can go watch it over and over if they want to hear it again. Because I think sometimes just hearing something is not
Yeah.
enough. And actually writing this course has really opened my eyes to different methods of communication with people and how different people learn.
Yep.
And I think it's so important to communicate in all those different ways and to make things more accessible to people. And actually, I have a friend who's a sign language interpreter, and she has offered to sign language interpret my course. And I haven't gotten to it yet, but at some point, she's going to take all the videos from my course and sign language interpret those, and I'm going to incorporate those in there. So I'm super excited about
That
that.
that is
But
amazing.
because I think it would be so scary to be hearing impaired and going into this whole process and not understand.
Yeah.
It would be terrifying.
I
So
love it.
I've also got a TikTok. I started out there too, but then I ended up just kind of focusing on Instagram. I'm all over
But
the place.
same. Yeah. Your
So I'm
people,
really,
your people
I'm
will
working
find
on
you.
it.
Yeah, no, your people will find you. I was gonna wonder if you were on TikTok. I was like, did she enter that whole like?
It's a different culture. That's for sure.
It is very
Yeah.
different. So no, but Dr. Leslie, I'm so excited. So if you missed it, Dr. Leslie was talking about her baby ready. So follow her, Dr. Leslie Treese. Please follow her.
Thank you.
You'll find out this as long as it saves. I will tag her handle in it as well. But do you have anything else you want to add before we close?
I don't think so. but one thing, I guess one more thing, just saying to the parents, just trust yourself and stay connected with your support system. And what, when something's wrong, always get help if you think something's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, don't just sit there and think, oh, I'm just bothering somebody or
Yeah.
whatever. So I
No.
think that's also common, and people wait too long to get attention.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you opening up my eyes in the most respectful manner, and just really not, all the social media stuff. And I appreciate me for, like, sometimes it can be hard for some people to accept, like, hey, what you've been doing isn't always right, and to always continue to learn. I was just telling the community when I was talking about it in my stories last week, I was like, I'm thankful for this place of growth. I'm thankful for
Sure.
just really opening your eyes up to so many different perspectives and not this one size tunnel vision approach, which is not me anyway. But when I look back and I was like, Diana, like, you've come a long way, and everyone's like to come on record and say you were wrong. And I'm like, yeah, because even though it's social media, we still have influence. Even though we're not influencers, we still have influence.
Right.
People look to us, people think about us. And as our platforms grow, I've always been committed to staying focused on being safe, because I sleep every night like a baby. And so I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you taking the time to research. This course sounds amazing,
Thank
because I think it's something, from a doctor perspective, I don't know if it's too many out here in the baby space, at least. So I'm so happy to help, spread the word that there's this course that's there. I really appreciate your time today and coming to the community. Mhm.
One more thing. So if anybody wants to access the course, I have a website,
Okay.
and they can also just DM me. That's fine
What's
too.
the
But
website?
so the website is www.childdevelopmentacademy.net,
Hmm.
and then all the offers are on my site, so they can look at like the course and the coaching, and I'm constantly evolving and working on all that. So, and I have another small offer that's called the Ultimate Parenting Starter Pack. And so it's the 20 frequently asked questions of parents and or new parents, and a tummy time template, and um shoot. Uh, I can't think. A developmental roadmap, and then a framework for sleep. So
That's amazing. That is so well thought out, that is amazing. So
thank you.
definitely check Dr. Leslie Treese, follow her for the information, but childdevelopmentacademy.net. And then you also have an ultimate parenting starter pack. Wow. So much. I'm so glad we crossed paths. Like, I believe that things
Same.
align the way they need to align. And I'm so happy to help you, just get the word out, on my platform. I remember when I was starting out, like, having those people to share, having those people to tell about you can be
Right.
very, very helpful. But I think this is amazing. So thank you so
I
much for your
appreciate
time
you.
today. Yes, you have a wonderful, and I do mean wonderful, afternoon. I didn't see any,
You
like,
too.
I think I addressed some of them. You've just, like, answered all the questions. But some of the main things that were about what we're talking about today, I think we kind of addressed it through talking through. So this live, fingers and toes are crossed, that it will be saved and you will be able to go back and view it at your leisure. So
All right. Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. You
Bye.
have a good one. Bye.
You too.